Alright, some of y'all need to calm down with the Kamala crap. Because the amount of condescending and insulting, oh, why is it Biden and Trump, but then it's Kamala and Hillary and AOC, sexist double standard much? Fucking comments are out of fucking hand. First off, there's a lesson here about picking your battles. When we have groups of people literally trying to overthrow democracy and rob women of their bodily autonomy and rights, picking this particular fight with the people who are on your side or on the fence, maybe not the best use of your time. Then there's also the lesson about critical thinking. Because maybe if you just thought about, the last two elections where we had Hillary Clinton run in the first and Kamala Harris run in the second, you remember who they ran against in the primaries? As a certified Bernie bro, let me fucking remind you, it was Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was the first political campaign I ever donated money to, and there is not a single politician on the national stage from my lifetime that I have more respect for, and I have never in my life referred to him as Sanders. However, I do refer to him as Bernie all the goddamn time. You know who else was running at the same time? Elizabeth Warren. Now, not I or anybody I know ever referred to her as Liz or Elizabeth. It was always Warren or Elizabeth Warren. Jill Stein has always been Stein or Jill Stein. Palin, Pelosi, Feinstein, Klobuchar. It's not like addressing women in politics by their first name is some common theme. Or addressing men by their first name is super uncommon. Who did Trump run against in his first primary? Jeb! Remember? Because he put a little exclamation point at the end, so you had to say it that way. In fact, for half the primary season, most of us thought we were going to have an election that was going to be between Hillary and Jeb. Remember all the jokes about how it was going to be Bush and Clinton like it was the fucking 90s again? We were all joking about how awful and ridiculous that was going to be. Hindsight, man. Speaking of baby Bush, we referred to him as W probably because we already had a Bush, which would make sense as to why we referred to Hillary as Hillary and not Clinton, because we already had one of those too. Hell, one of the greatest and most respected presidents in U.S. history, Teddy, not only did we call by his first name, but a nickname of his first name. Does it get any more informal? Trust me, none of us are referring to Donald Trump as Trump because of our overwhelming respect and admiration. We'd probably call him that because that's what he's put on the side of any flat or slightly curved surface that he's ever fucking touched. And AOC is a problem now, I've been informed as well. I can't think of any prominent men we've ever addressed by their initials. With the exception of, FDR and JFK and LBJ and MLK and RFK and RFK Jr. You get my point? And look, I get it. I empathize. There is a very real problem in our country about ingrained and institutionalized sexism and misogyny. And I totally get and understand why people get hypersensitive about things that they feel are reflections of that when we're on the brink of breaking through one of those glass ceilings. Like a woman potentially being president. Sometimes that hypersensitivity is misplaced and a name is just a name. And Kamala happens to be an interesting, memorable name. Harris does not. Kind of like Bernie is more interesting than Sanders. Biden is way more interesting than fucking Joe, and Trump isn't even a real name. They made it up. Their original last name was Drumpf or some shit. Look, I sympathize. As a straight white guy, I cannot imagine the struggles of being a woman in our society. But y'all need to empathize before you jump down somebody's throat and accuse them for being sexist because they used somebody's name. Especially when in the last two primaries, they addressed multiple male candidates by their first name and multiple female candidates by their last name. Think about it for a second. Is the person you're levying these comments at a sexist? I mean, I know I called Kamala Harris Kamala in a video, and I've gotten this accusation countless times. I've even gotten personal messages about it, and I spend monumental amounts of my time publicly standing up to misogynists and platforming women's rights and policy issues. Not to mention, I spend monumental amounts of my time coming up with creative ways to call politicians anything but their actual names. So ask yourselves, how many people are you alienating that are allies and advocates with this rhetoric? Is that really the hill you want to die on? This election is still far from clinched, so like I said, choose your fucking battles. And that goes for criticisms of her as well. I'm only going to say this one time before the election because I am ecstatic that my anxieties about her as a candidate do not seem to be coming to fruition. I am over the moon that the party has rallied around her and we're not going to have a contested convention and it's not going to be the shit show that I was anxious about it being. I am psyched that Gen Z is getting involved. I am psyched that minority women are organizing. I am stoked that we might get our first woman president. And I take my responsibilities as a person with a platform seriously, so I don't want to use that platform to do anything that might sap some of that enthusiasm or result in anything that could hurt the chances of Democrats up and down the ticket in the election. So this one time I'm going to explain this, so hopefully y'all quit doing it. I think Kamala Harris is a qualified candidate and would be a very competent president, and I will be voting for her. But the criticisms I and other people have about her today are the same criticisms we had 4 days ago and 4 fucking years ago. And when y'all condescendingly say, would you say the same things about her if she was a man? The answer is a resounding fucking yes. Not only would I have multiple fucking times. Have you seen any of my content. It's also insanely disingenuous because I've said incredibly critical things about lots of women like Katie Britt and Marsha Blackburn and Sarah Palin. Funny, I've never gotten the would you say the same thing if it was a man about them. So if that was your response, some introspection is in order. Now, for every disingenuous person who said would you say the same thing about a man, I had a person ask me honestly what my criticisms were. So this one time, because again, I don't want to sap enthusiasm. I want to put this out there first. When Biden was picking a VP, I wanted Duckworth or Warren. I thought Duckworth was perfect. A minority woman who's a disabled combat vet, a Rust Belt senator, and a certified badass. She checks every box. I like Warren because Warren promotes the progressive policies I want to see. I was not a fan of Harris because she spent the majority of her career being a prosecuting attorney and then an attorney general. During that time, she had a record number of marijuana prosecutions. When California started to early release nonviolent offenders because of overcrowding, she fought tooth and nail against it. One of her arguments for that was because prison firefighting systems needed more labor. Can't let the weed smokers go, we need our slaves. So yeah, I felt and feel that California's top cop, a queen of mass incarceration, a drive cog in a system of systematic racism and injustice, might be a weak candidate, especially when she was selected in the middle of the George Floyd stuff. Just saying, when police brutality, accountability, and criminal justice reform are headline issues, maybe not the best look. So when I say she gives me arrogant and pretentious vibes, it's not because she's a strong, confident woman. It's because she literally made it her job to lock people up and prosecute them for shit that doesn't hurt anybody, and she's undoubtedly done as well. Meanwhile, her predecessor expunged every single marijuana charge going back to 1975, so she could have done better and chose not to. So there's that, and then, her stance on the elephant in the Middle Eastern part of the room is probably not what it should be. Those are my criticisms. I feel they're pretty valid, and they have nothing to do with what's between her legs. On top of that, I also have some pretty intense criticisms of Biden and Obama and Clinton and pretty much every president going back to the beginning of time, with the exception of Jimmy Carter. I just have some soft criticisms of him. On the other hand, I also fully acknowledge that Kamala has been an incredibly involved vice president with a major list of unsung accomplishments. I think she's perfectly qualified to do the job, and I think she'd be very competent at it. I will be standing behind her through the election, and I am very happy that the barometer is pointing to her being a stronger candidate than the polls were originally letting on. That's all the negative I'm going to say until the election. Just remember, guys, pick your battles. Let's not go around alienating the people we need to win this election, because the last time we did that, we ended up with Trump. And if we don't learn from our history, we are doomed to repeat it. We have never been in more of a position to repeat history than we are right now. So as I say oh so often through this election season, make good choices. I love y'all.